In the summer of 1977, just weeks before his death, Elvis Presley made a chilling confession to his longtime friend and bodyguard, Red West. Standing in the dim hallway of Graceland at 3 a.m., Elvis grabbed West's arm and whispered words that would haunt him forever. "Red, I ain't gonna make it to see Christmas. Something's telling me my time's running short." West dismissed it as another of Elvis's late-night anxieties, fueled by prescription pills and paranoia. But when the king of rock and roll was found dead on August 16, 1977, those words took on a prophetic weight that nobody could ignore. What West didn't know was that Elvis had been making similar predictions to close friends for months, describing vivid dreams of his own funeral and speaking about death with an eerie certainty that suggested he knew something the rest of the world didn't. Throughout 1977, Elvis Presley's inner circle noticed a dramatic shift in his behavior and conversations. The man who once commanded stages with explosive energy had become obsessed with mortality, frequently waking his staff in the middle of the night to discuss haunting dreams that seemed to predict his own demise. According to Ginger Alden, Elvis's girlfriend at the time, the dreams began intensifying in January 1977. He would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, she recalled. In later interviews, he'd described seeing himself lying in a white room, surrounded by flowers and crying people. He could see his own body, but nobody could hear him calling out. These weren't typical nightmares. Elvis described them with photographic detail, including specific faces of mourners he claimed he'd never seen before, yet who would later appear at his actual funeral. Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis's personal physician, documented several instances where Elvis called him at dawn, frantically, describing dreams where he attended his own funeral service. "He told me he could see Colonel Parker crying, which disturbed him greatly because he'd never seen the colonel show emotion," Dr. Nick remembered. Elvis described the exact hymns that would be sung, the arrangement of flowers, even the color of the casket lining. When these details matched his actual funeral arrangements, it sent chills through everyone who had heard these stories. The dreams weren't limited to funeral imagery. Elvis frequently dreamed of August 16th specifically, though he couldn't understand why that date held significance. He told his cook, Nancy Rooks, that he kept seeing 8 to 16 written in various forms on bathroom mirrors, license plates, and even carved into trees at Graceland. He became fixated on that date months before anything happened, Rooks revealed. He'd circle it on calendars and ask people if they thought something important would happen then. Most disturbing were Elvis's descriptions of feeling like a spectator in his own life during these dreams. He claimed he could see himself making decisions that he knew were wrong, taking pills, isolating himself, ignoring health warnings, but felt powerless to change course. "It was like watching a movie where you want to warn the character, but you can't," he told his stepbrother Rick Stanley. This sense of predetermined fate began consuming Elvis's waking hours, leading him to make increasingly prophetic statements about his impending death. Elvis's final concerts in 1977 were filled with subtle, but unmistakable references to death and departure that audiences initially dismissed as artistic expression. However, careful analysis of his performances reveals a pattern of prophetic messaging that suggests Elvis was consciously preparing his fans for his departure. During his June 1977 concert in Rapid City, South Dakota, Elvis deviated from his usual between-song banter to deliver an unusually somber monologue. "You know, folks, we never know when our time is up," he told the crowd. "Every time I walk on stage, I wonder if this might be the last time you'll see the old boy perform." The audience laughed, thinking it was typical Elvis humor, but band members noticed he was fighting back tears as he spoke these words. His song choices during these final months became increasingly death-themed. Elvis began incorporating "It's Now or Never" and "My Way" into every show, often adding impromptu verses about saying goodbye. During a July concert in Indianapolis, he changed the lyrics of Love Me Tender to include the line, "When I leave this world behind, remember that you were mine." Backup singer Kathy Westmoreland later revealed that Elvis had never rehearsed these lyrical changes. They seemed to emerge spontaneously from some deep premonition. The most chilling moment came during his final concert on June 26, 1977, in Indianapolis. After performing Unchained Melody, Elvis remained seated at the piano and began speaking directly to the audience with unusual intensity. "I want you all to know that I love you," he said, his voice breaking. "And if something happens to me, I want you to remember that Elvis Presley went out loving his fans." He then performed an unscheduled version of He'll Have to Go, a song about permanent separation, while staring directly into the television cameras as if delivering a personal message to millions of viewers. Band members reported that Elvis's stage movements had become increasingly funeral-like. He would frequently spread his arms in a crucifixion pose during emotional ballads, and began kneeling more often, as if in prayer or surrender. His costume choices also reflected this morbid preoccupation. He specifically requested all white jumpsuits for his final performances, telling costume designer Bill Bellou, "I want to look like I'm ready to meet my maker." Perhaps most prophetically, Elvis began ending his concerts with extended versions of Can't Help Falling in Love, but he would change the final line from "For I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" to "For I Can't Help Saying Goodbye to You." These weren't documented lyric changes, and they confused both band members and audiences, but they created an atmosphere of finality that nobody could ignore. The walls of Graceland held secrets that wouldn't be revealed until years after Elvis's death, when staff members finally felt comfortable sharing the King's most private and prophetic moments. These intimate confessions, made in the safety of his beloved home, painted a picture of a man who seemed to possess supernatural knowledge of his approaching end. Graceland's head of security, Dick Grob, documented several late-night conversations where Elvis spoke with startling clarity about his death. In May 1977, Elvis called Grob to the Jungle Room at 2 a.m. and began discussing funeral arrangements with the matter-of-fact tone of someone planning a vacation. "Dick, when I go, I want to be buried next to my mama," Elvis said. "And I want you to make sure they don't put me in one of those fancy bronze caskets." Something simple, something that says Elvis was just a regular guy who happened to sing. What made these conversations particularly eerie was Elvis's specific knowledge of details he shouldn't have known. He told Grob that his funeral would be held on a Thursday, that it would rain during the service, and that there would be problems with crowd control that would require bringing in extra security from Memphis Police Department. All of these predictions proved accurate. Elvis also predicted that someone would try to steal his body, leading to his eventual burial in Graceland's meditation garden, a move that hadn't been planned until after the actual theft attempt occurred. Graceland's cook, Pauline Nicholson, recalled Elvis's habit of standing in the dining room, staring at his mother's portrait, and having one-sided conversations that sounded like goodbye speeches. He would tell her picture that he'd be seeing her soon. Nicholson remembered. He'd say things like, "Don't worry, Mama. I'll be home before summer's over." This was in early 1977, and it gave all of us the chills because he spoke with such certainty. The most documented of these prophetic moments occurred during a family dinner in July 1977. Elvis suddenly stopped eating and announced to the gathered relatives, "Y'all better enjoy these times together, because I won't be here much longer." When his aunt, Delta Mae Biggs, scolded him for such morbid talk, Elvis responded, "I'm not being morbid, Delta. I'm just telling you what I know to be true. Something inside me is counting down, and the clock's almost at zero." Elvis also began giving away personal possessions with unusual frequency and specific instructions. He gave his stepbrother Billy Stanley a ring saying, "Keep this and remember, me buy it because you won't be seeing me around much longer." To his cousin Patsy, he gave a scarf saying, "This is for you to remember Elvis." I went on, just a memory. These weren't casual gifts. Elvis delivered them with the solemnity of someone distributing final keepsakes. The last 48 hours of Elvis Presley's life were filled with actions and statements that, in retrospect, read like a carefully orchestrated farewell guided by supernatural foresight. Every decision Elvis made during this period seemed calculated to fulfill the prophecies he had been making for months. On August 15, 1977, Elvis spent the day making phone calls to friends and family members, conversations that sounded distinctly like final goodbyes. He called his ex-wife Priscilla and told her, "Take care of Lisa Marie. Make sure she knows her daddy loved her more than life itself." He called his father Vernon and said, "Daddy, you've been the best father a son could ask for. I want you to know that." These weren't typical conversations for Elvis, who usually avoided overly sentimental phone calls. Ginger Alden later revealed that Elvis spent August 15th cleaning out personal items and organizing his bedroom with unusual precision. He kept saying he wanted everything to be in order, she recalled. He arranged his books, organized his medicine cabinet, and even laid out clothes for the next day, which was strange because he never planned outfits in advance. Most significantly, Elvis placed a book called The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus on his nightstand, open to a page about resurrection and eternal life. The accuracy of Elvis's earlier prophecies became undeniable in these final hours. He had predicted he would die at home, alone, in a bathroom. Details that seemed random when he first shared them, but proved devastatingly accurate. He had told several people that his death would occur when the sun was highest in the sky, and he was discovered around 2:30 p.m. He had also predicted that he would be found by someone who loved him. And it was indeed Ginger Alden who discovered his body. Perhaps most chilling was Elvis's final conversation with his stepmother Dee Presley around midnight on August 16th. He called her and said, "Dee, I want you to know that Elvis Presley died tonight. The man you'll see tomorrow won't be me anymore." She thought he was being dramatic about feeling sick, but in hindsight, these words carried prophetic weight that suggested Elvis knew exactly what was about to unfold. Elvis's final written words also proved prophetic. On a pad next to his bed, investigators found a note in Elvis's handwriting that read, "I go to my father's house to prepare a place for you." Below that, he had written the date August 16th, 77, and the time 2:30, remarkably close to the actual time of discovery. This note wasn't found until weeks later, hidden under other papers, but it provided the most concrete evidence that Elvis possessed supernatural knowledge of his death's timing and circumstances. Elvis Presley's uncanny ability to predict the details of his own death remains one of music history's most compelling mysteries. From his vivid dreams to his cryptic stage messages, from his Graceland confessions to his eerily accurate final predictions, the king of rock and roll appeared to possess knowledge that transcended normal human understanding. Whether you believe in supernatural premonition or simply view these incidents as tragic coincidence, one thing remains clear. Elvis Presley spent his final months preparing for a departure he somehow knew was inevitable. Want to explore more unexplained mysteries from music history? Subscribe to our newsletter for weekly deep dives into the supernatural side of entertainment's biggest legends. Click here to join thousands of readers uncovering the truth behind the myths.